1 year after the Council declared war, the conflict was effectively over. The last Council military forces had been cornered in the remnant sector, a cluster of 7 star systems that were all that remained of their once vast empire. Admiral Kim Ji-won stood on the Bridge of Defiance, looking at the tactical display that showed 3,000 Council ships, surrounded by 4,000 human vessels there, requesting surrender terms, her communications officer reported. Ji-won nodded slowly. A year of war. 15 million human dead. Over 2 billion Council casualties. 42 occupied worlds. 11,000 destroyed warships, all because the Council had been arrogant enough to believe humanity would simply roll over and die. Open a channel, she ordered. War Master Krill appeared on the screen. The once proud Chitter looked broken, his mandibles drooping with defeat. Admiral Ji-won, I am prepared to discuss terms of surrender. Unconditional surrender, Ji-won said flatly.
Your ships will power down all weapons and submit to boarding.
Your leadership will stand trial for war crimes. The Council as a political entity will be dissolved. Those are my terms, and if we refuse, then we continue this war until there's nothing left of Council civilization. Your choice, War Master. Krill looked at her for a long moment, seeing the absolute conviction in her eyes. She wasn't bluffing. If he refused, she would follow through on her threat, and they both knew it. We accept your terms, he said quietly. Captain O. Danby commanded the prison ship Reckoning, now holding over 300 Council war criminals awaiting trial. She walked through the corridors, checking security as guards escorted the former counselors to their cells. These beings had ordered the deaths of millions, had sanctioned experiments on human prisoners, had tried to exterminate her entire species. And now they were completely at her mercy. Captain, one of her guards said, Counselor Thexvar is requesting to speak with you. Danby considered refusing, then curiosity got the better of her. She entered the cell where the former Council leader sat on a simple bunk, his scales dull with stress. What do you want? She asked. I want to understand, Thexvar said. We had superior numbers, superior technology, thousands of years of military experience. How did you defeat us? Danby leaned against the cell wall. You want the truth? You lost because you've forgotten what real war is. The Council has been the dominant power for so long that you thought war was about lining up ships and exchanging fire until one side surrendered. You thought it was about honor and rules and civilized conduct, and it's not? No, real war is about survival. It's about doing whatever it takes to protect your people. You fought like it was a game with rules. We fought like our extinction was on the line because it was. You held back. We didn't. That's why we won. Thexvar absorbed this in silence. Finally, he said, We should have listened to the few who warned us about humanity. They said you were survivors who had nearly destroyed yourselves multiple times and kept going. We thought that made you weak. We didn't understand it made you strong. Yeah, Danby agreed. You really should have paid attention to that. Elder Kreshnak, the last surviving founder of the Galactic Council, requested a meeting with Admiral Ji-won. The ancient crystalline being had been in stasis during most of the war, awakened only when the Council's defeat became inevitable. They met in a neutral conference room aboard Unity Station, just the two of them. Why haven't you destroyed us? Kreshnak asked in a voice like wind chimes. You have the capability. The Cascade Protocol could wipe out our civilizations overnight. Why show mercy? Ji-won looked at the ancient being. Because we're not you. The Council wanted to exterminate humanity because you feared us. We won't exterminate the Council species because we're better than that. But make no mistake, the Council as it existed is finished. You'll stand trial for your crimes. The member species will be free to choose their own paths, and humanity will be watching to ensure you never threaten another species again. So we trade one master for another? No, Ji-won said firmly. You'll be free. Truly free for the first time in thousands of years. But freedom comes with responsibility. You'll have to learn to coexist without dominating. And if you can't learn that, then yes, we'll intervene. Kreshnak was silent for a long time. I was there when the Council was founded, 10,000 years ago. We created it to prevent war, to ensure peace and cooperation among the stars. Somewhere along the way, we became what we were trying to prevent. We became tyrants. Then maybe it's time for something new, Ji-won suggested. The war crimes trials began on Unity Station, broadcast across the galaxy. Dr. Park Min-ho served as chief prosecutor, presenting evidence of the Council's crimes. The experiments on human prisoners, the attempted genocide, the use of planet-killer weapons, the destruction of civilian targets. Counselor Thexvar stood trial first. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Video recordings of his orders, testimony from survivors, documents bearing his signature authorizing atrocities. The defense tried to argue that he had acted in what he believed were the council's best interests, but the judges were unmoved. The council believed humanity was too dangerous to exist, Minho said in his closing statement. They believed we were primitive, aggressive, and a threat to galactic peace. They used this belief to justify attempted genocide. But the truth is, we were dangerous only because we refused to be victims. We were aggressive only in defense of our survival, and we were a threat only to those who sought to destroy us. He turned to face Thexvar directly. You started this war because you were afraid of what humanity might become. In doing so, you created the very enemy you feared. You forced us to show the galaxy what humans are capable of when fighting for survival. The responsibility for every death in this war, human and council alike, rests on your shoulders. The verdict was guilty on all counts. Thexvar was sentenced to life imprisonment, as were most of the council leadership. Some were executed for specific atrocities. Others received lesser sentences in exchange for testimony and cooperation. 2 years after the war ended, the galaxy was rebuilding. The former council species worked to restore their damaged worlds under human supervision. New governments formed, democratic rather than authoritarian. Trade routes reopened. And slowly, carefully, trust began to grow. Commander Lee Soman, promoted to admiral, now commanded humanity's exploration fleets. Her mission was to venture into unexplored space to find new species and, if necessary, protect them from threats both internal and external. Her ships carried the most advanced technology humanity could build, and crews trained in both diplomacy and warfare. We made mistakes with the Council, she told her officers during their first mission briefing. We were too passive, too willing to accept their condescension. We won't make that mistake again. We'll meet new species as equals, offer friendship and trade, but never again will humanity bow to anyone. Captain Han Doyen retired to New Busan Colony, which had been rebuilt into a thriving settlement. He spent his days teaching at the local military academy, training the next generation of officers. His students often asked him about the war, about what it was like to face such overwhelming odds. It was terrifying, he would tell them honestly. Every battle I thought would be my last. But we fought anyway because we had no choice. The lesson you need to learn isn't how to win impossible battles. It's that some battles have to be fought regardless of the odds, because the alternative is worse than death. Dr. Park Min-ho became the first Secretary General of the Galactic Union, a new organization built to replace the Council. Unlike the old Council, which had been dominated by a few powerful species, the Union gave every member species an equal voice. Decisions required consensus, not dictates from above. His first major initiative was the Never Again Protocols, a set of laws designed to prevent any species from threatening another with extinction. Member species agreed to mutual defense pacts, technology sharing, and regular inspections to ensure compliance. Those who violated the protocols faced sanctions from all member species, including military intervention if necessary. The Council failed because it was built on fear and domination, Minho said at the Union's founding ceremony. The Union will succeed because it's built on mutual respect and cooperation. We're all equals here, and we'll all be stronger for it. Admiral Kim Ji-won retired from active service and began writing her memoirs. The book, titled The War That Didn't Need to Happen, became required reading throughout the galaxy. In it, she reflected on the lessons of the war and what it meant for the future. One passage became particularly famous. The Council's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating our military capability. It was underestimating our determination to survive. They thought we were just another species that could be bullied into submission. They didn't understand that humans have been fighting to survive since we first climbed down from the trees. We've faced extinction dozens of times in our history, and we're still here. The Council learned too late that you cannot break a species that has already survived the impossible. Counselor Thexvar, serving his sentence in a comfortable but secure facility, agreed to be interviewed by human historians. The interview, conducted 5 years after the war, provided insights into the Council's thinking. This war is far from over. Now we take the fight to them. Now we show them that humans don't just defend. Yet 6 months had passed since the Council's failed attack on Earth, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Council, once the undisputed power in known space, was losing the war they had started with such confidence. Their territory had shrunk by 30%. 15 of their member worlds had been occupied by human forces. And still, humanity pressed forward like an unstoppable tide. Admiral Minji commanded the Second Fleet, a force of 250 ships that had pushed deep into Council space. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as another Council defense station collapsed under sustained bombardment. Her orders were simple and brutal: destroy every military installation, hunt down every warship, and force civilian populations to choose between neutrality and destruction. "Ma'am, we're receiving a surrender offer from the planetary governor," her communications officer reported. "What are the terms?" Minji asked without taking her eyes off the tactical display. "They want to remain neutral. They'll disarm completely and refuse to provide any support to Council forces. In exchange, we don't bombard their planet." Minji considered for a moment. "Acceptable. Send ground forces to verify compliance, then move to the next system. We have 17 more targets on the list." This was the pattern throughout the war now. Council worlds, seeing the devastation humanity could unleash, chose survival over loyalty. The Council's grand alliance was fracturing, and there was nothing their leadership could do to stop it. Lieutenant Kang Suho had become a legend in just 6 months. Flying the experimental fighter Guangbok, he had personally destroyed 43 Council warships, including 2 dreadnoughts. His tactics were simple but terrifyingly effective. Get close enough that their point defense systems couldn't track him, then systematically tear the ship apart from the inside out. The Battle of Kepler 442 had made him famous across the galaxy. A Council dreadnought, Pride of Empire, had been attacking a human colony. Suho had been the only fighter pilot in range. For 40 minutes he had danced around the massive warship, dodging defensive fire that should have vaporized him 100 times over. He targeted critical systems one by one: sensors, weapons arrays, engine pods, life support. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Pride of Empire was a floating wreck, and Suho was out of ammunition but still very much alive. Combat footage of that battle spread throughout Council space. Council crews watched in horror as a single human fighter took apart a ship 10,000 times its size. Morale, already low, plummeted further. If one human could do this, what could a squadron do? What could a fleet do? Councillor Vexler, one of the few Council members who had voted against the war, now led a secret peace faction within the Council government. He arranged a private meeting with Dr. Park Minho at a neutral space station near the frontier. "We want to end this war," Vexlar said without preamble. "Councillor Thexvar refuses to admit defeat, but the rest of us can see the truth. We're losing. Soon we'll have lost everything." Minho sipped his tea calmly. "You started this war. You declared you would exterminate humanity. And now that we're winning, you want peace?" "Yes," Vexlar said simply. "Pride is worthless if your civilization is destroyed. What are you offering?" "Complete withdrawal from human space. Reparations for the damage we caused. Recognition of humanity as an equal power. Everything can return to how it was before." Minho set down his tea and looked the aquatic counselor in the eye. "No," Vexlar blinked in surprise. "No, but these terms are generous. What more do you want?" "The Council as it exists must be dismantled. Every member of the Council leadership must stand trial for war crimes. The territories you control must be given self-determination, and humanity will have oversight to ensure you never threaten another species again. That's the complete destruction of our civilization." "You were going to do the same to us," Minho said coldly. "The difference is we're giving you a chance to rebuild." "That's more mercy than you showed us," Vexlar left the meeting knowing that the war would continue until the Council had nothing left to fight. With Captain Han Doyen led a task force to liberate human prisoners from Council camps. Intelligence had located 3 detention facilities where captured humans were being held. What they found when they stormed the first camp made Doyen physically ill. The Council had been experimenting on human prisoners, trying to understand what made them such effective fighters. They had conducted painful tests on aggression, pain tolerance, and psychological breaking points. Medical equipment was stained with human blood. Examination tables still held restraints that had held his people while Council scientists cut into them, but they found no survivors. The Council had executed all prisoners when they learned human forces were coming. Doyen stood in the empty camp looking at the rows of body bags and felt his grief transform into cold fury. "Sir," his second-in-command said quietly, "what are your orders?" "Document everything. Every piece of equipment, every data file, every body. This evidence goes directly to Admiral Jiwan. The galaxy needs to know what the Council did here. The discovery of the prison camps hardened humanity's resolve. There would be no negotiated peace, no return to the old order. The Council had shown what they were capable of, and humanity would not forget." Lieutenant Kang Suho found himself reassigned to escort duty for the Admiral after his fame made him too valuable to risk in regular combat. He was flying patrol near Admiral Beck Minji's flagship when Council assassins made their move. 5 stealth ships, modified for infiltration, tried to kamikaze into the flagship's bridge. Suho's response was instant. Guangbok accelerated to full speed, intercepting the first assassin ship and destroying it with a point-blank missile strike. The second tried to dodge around him, but Suho anticipated the move and shredded it with cannon fire. The third, fourth, and fifth came at him simultaneously. For 90 seconds, Suho performed maneuvers that violated several laws of physics and probably should have killed him. He flew between incoming fire, used one assassin ship as cover against another, and at one point actually landed Guangbok on an enemy hull long enough to plant explosives before jumping away. When it was over, all 5 assassin ships were destroyed, and Suho's fighter was held together mostly by hope and spare parts. Admiral Minji personally awarded him a commendation while her maintenance crews tried to figure out how his fighter was still functional. "Lieutenant," she said, "you have permission to stop doing impossible things. You're making the rest of us look bad." Suho grinned, still high on adrenaline. "Sorry, ma'am. I'll try to be more reasonable next time someone tries to kill you." The war continued its brutal progression. Admiral Kim Ji-won's strategy was working perfectly. Every time the Council tried to mass forces for a counterattack, human strike forces would hit them from an unexpected direction. Every time they tried to defend a position, humans would simply bypass it and strike somewhere else. The Council was being forced to defend everything while humans could attack anywhere. On Nexus Station, now renamed Unity Station after its capture and recapture 3 times, Councillor Thexvar finally accepted the reality of his situation. The Council had been reduced to 7 core systems. Their fleet was down to 3,000 operational ships. Member species were abandoning the Alliance daily. The war was lost, but Thexvar refused to surrender. If the Council was going to fall, he would take humanity with him. He issued a secret order that would damn his legacy forever. Activate the planet-killer weapons. These ancient devices, outlawed for thousands of years, had been kept in hidden storage as a final deterrent. Each one could shatter a planet's crust, boiling oceans and tearing continents apart. Thexvar ordered them deployed against Earth and humanity's major colonies. What he didn't know was that Ambassador Quentara had defected to the human side weeks earlier. She had provided humanity with every secret the Council possessed, including the location of these weapons. When the planet-killer fleet left its hidden base, Admiral Jiwan was waiting. The battle lasted 4 hours. The Council escort fleet fought desperately to protect their ultimate weapons, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. One by one, the planet-killers were destroyed before they could reach their targets. When it was over, every planet-killer was space debris, and Thexvar's last gambit had failed. Dr. Seo Hana presented Admiral Jiwan with a new weapon, something that terrified even her. We call it the Cascade Protocol. It's a quantum virus that would shut down every piece of Council technology simultaneously. Their ships, their stations, their planetary infrastructure. Everything would stop working. On how many would die? G1 asked. Billions, probably. Their civilizations would collapse overnight. It would be like sending them back to the Stone Age, except they don't remember how to survive without technology. Jiwan looked at the data, feeling the weight of billions of lives in her hands. Prepare it, but don't deploy. Keep it as insurance. I want the Council to surrender, not be exterminated. General Nam Taiyang led the final assault on the Council's emergency bunker on Valtara Prime. His Marines stormed through layers of defense, meeting fierce resistance from the Council's elite guards. But elite or not, they couldn't stop soldiers who had trained in T. The Council fleet arrived at Earth like a swarm of locusts blotting out the stars. 12,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. War Master Krill stood on his bridge and looked at the blue planet hanging in space before him. This would be the end of humanity's resistance. One overwhelming strike and it would all be over. Begin the attack, he ordered. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations to come, though most of those academies would be human ones. Captain Yoon-jae commanded Earth's orbital defense network from a bunker deep beneath the Himalayas. Around him, hundreds of officers monitored thousands of automated defense platforms, each one packed with weapons that made traditional military hardware look like toys. Enemy fleet in range, his tactical officer reported. Weapon systems online. Awaiting your command, sir. Jay looked at the display showing the massive Council fleet approaching Earth. For a moment he felt the weight of human history on his shoulders. Everything humanity had built, everything they had accomplished depended on the next few hours. Fire everything, he said calmly. Space around Earth erupted into chaos. Millions of defense drones launched from hidden platforms, each one a missile with basic AI and enough explosive power to cripple a cruiser. They swarmed toward the Council fleet like angry bees, too numerous to shoot down, too fast to avoid. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers, positioned throughout Earth's orbital space, fired in coordinated volleys. Invisible beams of coherent radiation sliced through Council shields like they weren't there. Ships broke apart, atmosphere venting into space. Crews died before they could even scream. Railguns fired from the moon and from stations hidden in the asteroid belt. Tungsten rods the size of telephone poles, accelerated to 3% of light speed, punched through hulls with kinetic force that turned matter into plasma. One shot could destroy a battleship. Earth had thousands of railguns firing simultaneously. The Council fleet staggered under the onslaught. In the first 6 hours, 800 ships were destroyed. 800. Krill watched in horror as his carefully planned attack dissolved into desperate survival. This was impossible. This was just one planet's defenses. How could primitives have built such devastation? All ships return fire. Concentrate on the defense platforms. But targeting the human defenses was like trying to fight shadows. The drones were everywhere and nowhere. The laser platforms were hidden among orbital debris and civilian satellites. The railguns were too far away to effectively target. And now the human fleet was arriving from behind them, emerging from quantum jumps with perfect timing. Admiral Kim Ji-won's flagship, Defiance, appeared at the edge of the battle. Around her, 300 human warships materialized from quantum space, fresh and ready for battle. The Council fleet suddenly found itself caught between Earth's defenses and a human fleet that hit them from behind like a hammer. All ships, attack pattern Omega. Target their command vessels. Let's cut the head off this snake. The human ships dove into battle with a ferocity that shocked the Council forces. These weren't the cautious maneuvers of civilized warfare. These were the tactics of predators, ships designed to hurt and kill, piloted by a species that had been fighting wars since before they discovered fire. Ji-won watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. The Council had expected Earth to be poorly defended, perhaps a few dozen ships and some orbital guns. Instead, they had found a fortress that humanity had been building for 30 years. Ever since they realized the Council looked down on them with contempt. Meanwhile, across Council space, Commander Lee So-min led her raids deeper into enemy territory. Her targets now weren't just military installations. She struck at the heart of Council logistics. Fuel depots, ammunition factories, food processing centers. The Council's war machine needed supplies and So-min was systematically destroying their ability to provide them. Silent arrow to all ships. Next target is the Chitter Industrial Complex. Quantum jump in 3, 2, 1 mark. Space twisted, and 20 human stealth ships appeared above the Chitter homeworld. The insectoid species had been among the most vocal supporters of the war, and War Master Krill himself was Chitter. Now their planet watched helplessly as human ships destroyed their industrial capacity. Missiles rained down on factories and refineries. Orbital bombardment turned supply depots into craters. In 30 minutes, the Chitter lost 20% of their industrial output. Then the human ships vanished again, jumping to the next target before defense fleets could arrive. At New Busan Colony, Captain Han Doyun supervised the repair of his battle-damaged destroyer. His ship had barely survived the first battle, but he refused to abandon his post. The colony was still evacuating, and someone needed to protect the civilian ships. Captain, Council fleet approaching. Estimate 200 ships. Doyen looked at his own small force. 5 operational ships, 2 barely functional, against 200. But he had learned something in that first battle. The Council fought by the book with predictable tactics and rigid formations. Humans were more creative. Launch all our remaining drones. Program them to look like full-sized warships on Council sensors. Then take us into the asteroid field. If they want us, they'll have to come in and dig us out. His plan worked better than he hoped. The Council fleet saw what appeared to be 50 human warships hiding in the asteroids and called for reinforcements before attacking. By the time they realized the deception, the civilian evacuation was complete, and Doyen's ships had escaped through quantum jump. Back at Earth, the battle entered its 30th hour. The Council fleet had been reduced to 9,000 ships. They had destroyed thousands of Earth's defense drones and dozens of platforms, but the cost had been devastating. War Master Krill knew he had to break through soon or face complete defeat. All ships kamikaze attack on the defense grid, ramming speed. We must break through to the surface. It was an act of desperation, and it failed spectacularly. The human defenses had been designed by people who knew what desperate enemies might try. As Council ships accelerated toward Earth, they ran into a minefield of nuclear weapons that detonated in a chain reaction, destroying hundreds more ships in seconds. General Nam Taiyang led his Marines in an audacious assault that no one had expected. While the Council fleet was focused on Earth, he took 5 transport ships through quantum jump directly to Nexus Station, the Council's political heart. All Marines, prepare for combat drop. Remember, we're not here to hold the station. We're here to send a message and grab their data. In and out in 30 minutes. The Marines dropped from low orbit in powered armor that made them look like armored demons. Council security forces tried to stop them and died in seconds. These guards had been trained for ceremonial duties and minor disputes, not for soldiers who had trained in Earth's most brutal combat schools. The Marines stormed through Nexus Station like a force of nature. They planted explosives, downloaded terabytes of classified Council data, and captured several high-ranking Council officials who had the misfortune of being at the station during the attack. Then they boarded their ships and jumped away, before the Council could mount a proper response. Dr. Seohana studied the captured Council data in a secret laboratory beneath Seoul. What she found was both disturbing and useful. The Council species had been genetically modified over thousands of years. Their aggressive tendencies bred out to create a peaceful, cooperative civilization. They've made themselves weak, she reported to Admiral Jiwon. Their soldiers don't have the killer instinct. They can fight, but they don't have the drive to win at any cost. It's been engineered out of them. Can we use this? Jiwon asked, already working on it. Psychological warfare. We show them what humans are really capable of when we're fighting for survival. Show them our history, our wars, our refusal to surrender. It should break their morale. Within days, every Council ship started receiving broadcasts. Images of human warfare through the ages. World War II, the nuclear bombings, trench warfare. Guerrilla fighters who never surrendered. Humans who chose death over defeat. For species that had been bred for cooperation and peace, these images were like horror movies made real. Council crews began to break psychologically. Desertions increased. Some ships simply refused to fight. Others surrendered at the first sign of human forces. War Master Krill watched his mighty fleet fall apart not from military defeat alone, but from the realization of what kind of enemy they were facing. They're not civilized, he whispered to himself. They're survivors. We've been playing at war while they've been perfecting it for their entire existence. The Battle of Earth lasted 48 hours. When it ended, the Council fleet had lost 4,000 ships and retreated in disorder. Earth stood victorious, battered but unbroken. Captain Yoon Jae looked at the casualty reports with a heavy heart. 15 million dead, mostly from the initial attack on Mars and the orbital bombardments that got through the defenses. But Earth had survived. Admiral Jiwon addressed her fleet from the Bridge of Defiance. The Council came here to exterminate us. They wanted to show the galaxy what happens when you defy their will. Instead, we've shown them what happens when you threaten humanity. The deadline passed without a word from humanity. War Master Krill stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory, surrounded by 2,000 warships that stretched across space like a deadly constellation. He had expected the humans to beg, to plead, perhaps even to fight a token resistance before surrendering. Instead, there was only silence. Send the message to all fleet commanders, Krill ordered. We will demonstrate the consequences of defiance. Target Mars colony, bombardment pattern 7. His officers moved to comply. Within minutes, 100 Council warships opened fire on the red planet below. Energy beams and kinetic missiles rained down on the colony, tearing through domes and habitats. Alarms screamed. People died. In less than an hour, 50,000 human colonists were dead. Krill watched the destruction with satisfaction. Surely now they will surrender. Send another message to Earth. Tell them this is what happens when they defy the Council. But the response that came back was not surrender. It was a single transmission broadcast across every frequency, heard by every ship in Council space. Admiral Kim Ji-won's voice was calm, almost conversational, but her words made Krill's blood run cold. You wanted war. You'll get war, but not the kind you're used to. Then the transmission cut off. Krill stood there, uncertain for the first time. What did that mean? What could these primitives possibly do against the might of the entire Galactic Council? He was about to find out. Commander Lee Soman sat in the cockpit of her stealth frigate, Silent Arrow, deep in Council territory. Around her, 23 other ships waited in the darkness of space, completely invisible to Council sensors. They had used quantum drives to jump here, technology the Council didn't even believe was possible. Now they floated like ghosts above a massive shipyard orbiting the Vakor homeworld. All ships report ready, her tactical officer whispered, as if speaking too loud might give them away despite their advanced stealth systems. Soman checked her chronometer. Any moment now. The attack on Mars would be complete. The Admiral would have sent her message. It was time to show the Council what human warfare really looked like. All ships weapons free. Target the shipyards. Fire on my mark. She waited one more heartbeat. Mark. Silent Arrow unleashed hell. Missiles streaked across space, each one guided by AI systems that could predict and counter defensive moves. The other human ships fired simultaneously, and the Council shipyard never stood a chance. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Docks collapsed. Ships under construction broke apart. In 5 minutes, centuries of Council shipbuilding capability was reduced to floating debris. Jump us out, Soman ordered. Next target on the list. Before Council forces could even respond, the human ships vanished, their quantum drives carrying them to the next shipyard on the target list. By the time the sun rose on the Vakor homeworld, 3 major shipyards had been destroyed. The Council was in shock. How had humans penetrated so deep into their territory? How had they attacked 3 targets hundreds of light years apart in the same night? Captain Han Doyen's fleet faced the Council head-on near New Busan colony. His orders were simple. Delay them, make them bleed, buy time for the evacuation. He had 15 ships against 300. The mathematics were brutal, but Doyun had stopped caring about mathematics the moment he heard about Mars. All ships. Attack pattern Delta 7. Make them work for every inch. His destroyers surged forward, their movements coordinated with inhuman precision. Drones launched in swarms, thousands of them. Each one a tiny guided missile. The Council ships opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space. But the human ships moved like dancers, dodging and weaving, never holding still. A Council cruiser exploded as a human railgun round, moving at 3% of light speed, punched through its shields and hull like tissue paper. Another took a nuclear missile broadside and broke apart. A third found itself swarmed by drones that tore into its armor like piranhas. But the Council had numbers. 2 human destroyers went down, then 3. Doyen's own ship, Indomitable, shuddered as enemy fire scored its hull. Alarms wailed. Crew members died at their stations. But they kept fighting. Sir, we've lost main power to forward weapons, his tactical officer reported. Switch to backup systems. Keep firing. We're not done yet. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, 12 of Doyen's 15 ships were destroyed or crippled beyond repair. But the Council had lost 60 ships. 60 against 15. War Master Krill received the battle reports with growing unease. A 5-to-1 kill ratio should have been impossible. These were supposed to be primitives. It's just one battle, he told himself. Numbers will prevail in the end. But doubt had crept into his mind like a poison. What if he was wrong? What if the Council had made a terrible mistake? On Nexus Station, Councillor Thexivar dismissed the losses as acceptable casualties. We have thousands of ships. They have hundreds. Simple mathematics will win this war. But even as he spoke, more reports came in. Human raiders had struck supply depots across 4 sectors. Communication relays were going dark. A council admiral had been assassinated in his own quarters by a human infiltrator who vanished like smoke. Ambassador Quintera cornered Dr. Minho in a corridor. "What have your people done? Do you realize what will happen now? The council will throw everything at you. They'll burn Earth to ashes." Minho's face was grave. "Let them try. They think they're fighting a conventional war. They think we'll line up our fleets and face them honorably. But we're not fighting that kind of war. We're fighting for survival, and in a survival fight there are no rules." "You're going to lose," Quintera said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," Minho admitted, "but we'll make them pay for every victory in blood and fire. And when this is over, win or lose, the council will never be the same. They started this war thinking we were weak. They're about to learn the difference between civilization and survival instinct." Engineer Choi Hyun-woo worked frantically in his laboratory aboard the research station orbiting Jupiter. Around him, dozens of scientists and technicians assembled the devices that would change the war. The quantum drives had been a success beyond their wildest dreams. Now they were working on the next generation of weapons. AI-guided munitions that could learn and adapt. Directed energy weapons that could punch through any shield, and something else. Something that terrified even Hyun-woo when he thought about it too much. "How long until the antimatter torpedoes are ready?" Admiral Ji-won's voice crackled over the comm. 72 hours, Admiral. But I have to warn you, these weapons are incredibly dangerous. If one detonates prematurely, I understand the risks. The Council just committed 12,000 ships to attack Earth. We need every advantage we can get. Finish the weapons, Hyun-woo swallowed hard. Yes, Admiral. The first week of the war ended with the Council reeling from unexpected losses and humanity bloodied but unbroken. War Master Krill looked at the casualty reports and felt something he hadn't felt in his entire military career. Fear. The humans weren't fighting like any enemy he had faced before. They didn't hold territory. They didn't defend fixed positions. They struck from nowhere, inflicted devastating damage, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. And when they did fight defensive battles, they made the Council pay a terrible price for every victory. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked his aide. 847, War Master. Nearly 1,000 ships in 1 week, against an enemy that should have been crushed in days. Krill looked at the star charts showing human space. The Council fleet was closing on Earth, yes, but at what cost? And what would they find when they got there? On Earth, Admiral Ji-won watched the enemy fleet approaching and smiled. Let them come. They thought they were attacking a cornered animal. They didn't realize they were walking into a trap. Earth's orbital defenses had been designed by humans who remembered their own bloody history, who knew what total war really meant. The Council was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Councillor Thexvar rose from his seat. His scales gleamed under the artificial lights of Nexus Station, and his eyes held nothing but contempt. Below him, standing alone at the center of the vast chamber, Dr. Park Minho felt the weight of 47 alien species staring down at him. "The Council has made its decision," Thexvar announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Humanity has proven itself too dangerous, too unstable, too primitive to remain armed in civilized space. You have 72 hours to surrender all military vessels and submit to protective custody." Minho's hands clenched at his sides. Protective custody. They made it sound reasonable, even kind, but he knew what it meant. It meant the end of human independence. It meant becoming slaves in all but name. "Honored counselors," Minho began, keeping his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "My people have done nothing to warrant this action. We have followed every law, respected every treaty. Why are you doing this?" War Master Krill, a massive insectoid creature with mandibles that clicked with amusement, leaned forward. "Your species has developed faster than any other in recorded history. In 30 years, you have matched technology that took us thousands of years to achieve. Your people are aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerous. The Council cannot allow such a threat to exist." "We are not a threat," Minho insisted. "We only want to live in peace." "Peace?" Thexvar laughed, a harsh sound that made Minho's skin crawl. "Your planet nearly destroyed itself in nuclear fire before you even reached your own moon. Your history is written in blood. Wars, genocides, atrocities beyond counting. And you speak of peace?" Minho opened his mouth to respond, but Thexvar cut him off with a wave of his clawed hand. "The decision is made. 72 hours. Comply or face total annihilation. This session is concluded." The chamber erupted in dismissal sounds from dozens of different species. Minho stood there for a moment, alone in the center of the massive room, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. Then he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the emptying chamber. On the human destroyer Indomitable, Captain Han Doyen received the Council's ultimatum with a calm expression that betrayed none of his inner turmoil. Around him, his bridge crew looked to him for guidance, for some sign of what they should do. "Sir?" his first officer asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Doyen looked at the message again, reading the cold words that demanded humanity's surrender. He had fought in the border wars, had seen what happened when humanity was pushed into a corner. The Council had no idea what they were about to unleash. "Contact Admiral Kim Ji-won," he said finally, "and prepare the ship for combat operations. Begin evacuation procedures for New Busan Colony. We have 72 hours. Across human space, the same scene played out on hundreds of ships and stations. Admiral Kim Ji-won stood in the command center of Earth's United Fleet headquarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing every human military asset in known space. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but everyone in the room looked to her with respect born of decades of brilliant tactical victories. "They actually did it," her chief of staff said in disbelief. "They declared war on us." "They declared our extinction," Ji-won corrected. She turned to face her assembled officers. "Gentlemen and ladies, initiate Protocol Ragnarok. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Galactic Council." A young officer raised his hand hesitantly. "Admiral, with respect, their fleet outnumbers us 200 to 1. How can we possibly win?" Ji-won smiled, but it was a cold smile that made several officers step back. "Who said anything about fighting fair? The Council thinks we're primitive. They think we'll line up our ships and face them in honorable battle. They're about to learn that humans don't fight that way. We fight to win, by any means necessary." She activated a series of displays that showed classified projects, secret weapons, and tactical plans that had been years in the making. "We knew this day might come. We've been preparing since the day we joined their precious council. Now we show them what happens when you threaten humanity with extinction." On Mars Colony, alarms began to wail. Colonists rushed to evacuation shuttles carrying children and precious belongings as they fled to deeper bunkers. The colony administrator, a tired man named Cho Biom, helped load the last shuttle when his assistant ran up to him. "Sir, shouldn't you be evacuating too?" Biom shook his head. "Someone needs to maintain the defense grid. Get these people to safety. That's an order." The assistant wanted to argue but knew it would be useless. He saluted and boarded the shuttle. Biom watched it disappear into the red Martian sky, then turned back to his monitoring station. If the Council came here, they would find that humans knew how to make every inch of ground cost their enemies dearly. Back at Nexus Station, Ambassador Quintera, one of the few Council members who had voted against the war, found Dr. Minho in his quarters. The avian diplomat's feathers were ruffled with distress. "You must flee," she urged him. "Take your people and run as far as you can. The Council will not stop until every human is dead or enslaved." Minho poured himself a drink with steady hands. "Thank you for your concern, Ambassador. But we tried running once a long time ago in our history. It didn't work then. It won't work now." "You don't understand," Quintera insisted. "The Council has fought thousands of wars. They always win. Always. Your people are brave, but bravery won't stop their fleets." Minho took a sip of his drink and looked out the viewport at the stars. "You're right. We don't have their numbers or their experience, but we have something they don't have, something they've forgotten after millennia of easy victories." "What's that?" "We know how to lose everything and still keep fighting. We've done it before on our own world, dozens of times. We nearly wiped ourselves out half a dozen times and we're still here. The Council is about to learn a very hard lesson about what happens when you back a human into a corner." Quintara looked at the human diplomat with a mixture of admiration and pity. "I hope you're right. For all our sakes." As the 72-hour deadline ticked down, humanity prepared for war. Ships moved into position. Weapons were armed. Families said goodbye to their loved ones. And in command centers across human space, officers looked at maps of the galaxy and began planning not just to survive, but to win. The Council had declared war, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to surrender no matter the odds. The countdown continued. War was coming, and the galaxy would never be the same.